welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Chiron, and I'm the creator of Law of Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone who has left reviews. I'm really grateful. If you leave a review on iTunes, please just let me know and I will do a free oracle card reading. And I'm really excited about this week's episode. I have Emma Ljung as my guest. She's a therapist, an energy healer, cosmic channeler, Vedic astrologer, intuitive psychic, and she creates beautiful sacred smudge fans and art, and she has huge knowledge within Starseed Origins. And she has been on the podcast previously, and in this episode we talk about Vedic astrology. We get into the Hindu deities and planets, the gods. We talk about the moon and the sun, and also Rahu and Ketu, the north node and south node, and how this is all a part of our birth chart and our soul's essence. And she really gets into details, so it's really a beautiful episode, a beautiful sharing from Emma. If you want to get in touch with her, all of her links are in the show notes. So enjoy this week's episode. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
So glad to have you here.
Oh, well, I'm very glad to join you again.
Yeah, you were here a couple of months ago, and we had such a beautiful talk about Atlantis and a lot of great and fun topics. And I'm excited about today's topic. We're going to talk about Vedic astrology, one of the topics. And maybe you want to start by introducing yourself again to those that might not have listened to the first podcast we did together.
Well, my name is Emma. I am Swedish as well, and I work as an astrologer, artist, healer, medium, intuitive. I don't know. I do so many things. It's just like a list of things. But I work with. I'm very interested in and work with starseed channeling and all these cosmic, multi-dimensional things. And the Vedic astrology really speaks to me because it's the original astrology. many thousands of years ago. So I'm excited to talk about that.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I do share a lot of astrology, but I'm not in the Vedic astrology lineage, so I have a lot to learn as well from the Vedic. I've studied a bit, but I'm not that familiar with it. So maybe, do you want to talk about like the origins and the foundation of astrology from your point, and how did you get into it?
Well, sure. Unlike many, I started with the Vedic. A lot of people, including my teacher, started with the Western because that's what's most well known. I usually, with most of my clients and people I talk to, have to go through this. You know, what is why are my signs different, and all of this. So I thought that we might start with the origins, and so I found it because when I started my journey, towards self-discovery and healing and studying to be a therapist and healer and all this. It was kind of, everybody also went to this wonderful astrologer in Gothenburg called Johan Andau. He is brilliant. Studied in India, New York, and also has had connections with the Pleiadian, Syrian, and all other kind of emissaries who have also taught him things. So that's where I started my astrology journey. So that's all I've known. And that was maybe 9 years ago. And then a few years ago, I started to study it myself, to work with it. So I've studied it for a couple of years. Well, the origins, because if we talk about the Vedic astrology, we have to have a lot larger or bigger time frames. Every time frames work in cycles, as we know. So it's like, but I'll start from the beginning. You do know, because you are a yogi, the gods Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, I'm guessing, and all the others.
Yeah. You can also mention them for the listeners if you want to get into that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And just when I get going, I can just, it becomes like a channeling thing, or I just chat. So if you want, you can just like interrupt me if you want to ask me something.
No,
so it's not like a 40-minute lecture all by myself.
No, that's
I'm just saying
it's
that,
fun
so
to
that's
listen.
okay if you want to.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so Shiva is Pluto, Vishnu is Neptune, Brahma is Uranus. So Shiva is it's in the ancient Veda scriptures. I'm trying to find where I should start, because what is the beginning? But like Shiva, there is no beginning and no end. He is the only one who has not got any origin story. He just exists. The other ones have different birthing stories, as I'm sure you know. Vishnu walked out of the water, and so on. So, but because Shiva has never had any myth on how he came to be, it's generally believed by many who worship him that he has just always been there, and therefore he's like the perfect description or symbol of consciousness, because there's no beginning and there's no end. And funnily enough, he represents death. So in that we learn that death is just a transformation. There is no death, there is no ending. It's just shifting into a different kind of state. But anyway, so these three represents those three outer planets, and in the chart then you can look at that as your higher guides and how they work, but we'll wait with that. What happened according to legend is that Shiva was sitting on his Mount Kailash, which is, I learned just the other day, is apparently the crown chakra on Earth, which is interesting. He was sitting there, which is and was his place of meditation, and then 7 men, I think it was, walked up to him, and I don't know the full story, I will say, but they went there and he gifted them this knowledge of astrology, and this was obviously a long time ago, and also showed them then how it's supposed to be working as a transformative tool, because that's essentially what it is, or what it has been, what the point of it is. The planets all have inherent light, they all have inherent energy, they and the chart kind of shows what the soul had in mind before incarnating. What is the purpose of my incarnation this time? And so the Vedic astrology is very multi-layered. There's like, I think, up to 60 subcharts that you can do. I don't know how it works in Western, I will say, because I have never studied that. So I'm not knowledgeable in that. So if I say something that's not true about that, then you just cut in. But the Vedic is very, in that sense, very subtle, and there's a lot of layers, and there's there's a lot of different angles you can have, besides the basic chart of this is how it looked when I was born. So, and this is, I mean, they found scriptures, 8,000 or more. I'm not sure about that, but I mean, I know between 6,000 and 8,000 years ago, these scriptures that also depict yoga and Ayurveda and all of these, they also describe the astrology, because that's what a lot of old cultures, they lived in tune with the skies and the stars. The Sumerians, China, India, all of these, this is very well known. It's depicted in the Bible, and when they follow the stars, that is not the Western astrology, that's the Vedic, and all of this. So, because the Western astrology is about 500 years old, but I'll get to that. So yes, and I know I was thinking, I've heard this a long time ago, but I was thinking about it yesterday because of this call, and I was like going through things in my mind, like, how was it now? And, trying to remember all this and trying to put it together. I know that because of these scriptures describe all of this, it was a description of how did life work back then. And it was the yoga and the 8 limbs of yoga, I'm sure that, and the Vedas, and also this astrology and the description of the divine, and that those texts are where the word God comes from, essentially, which means the generator, the upholder, or the operator, and destructor. And that is also Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, Shiva. They're kind of interchangeable in my mind. So yeah. And so that's what they represent, basically, the cosmic law of that everything is born, comes into being. Brahma is the one who kind of creates the creator. Like Uranus is also the creator, the lightning bolts, the energy with new ideas, new energy coming in. Neptune is more of like sustainability and searching for truth and lifting illusions and development and the journey. And then Pluto and Shiva comes with the inevitable ending or transformation into another phase. And this is like the most ultimate, if you can ever talk about an absolute truth in our universe anyway, this is, I feel, the closest we get to it. Everything has to be created, sustained, and then destroyed. Whether it be a human, a planet, a star, a thought, a plant, anything. And, a state of mind, a tsunami, everything has to obey this law. So, and these 3 planets or 3 gods represent this process. And this is essentially what God is, which is what I usually go into saying when people ask me if I believe in God. I'm like, yes, but, and then I go into that rant, which is interesting, I think, because, and then religions came about and started to use these. That's generally what we know have happened. They take and use what has been believed by the people to try and make the transition easier. With Christmas was winter solstice. there's a lot of sources saying that Jesus was not born on solstice, but they changed it because it fits with the celebration, and then it's easier for people to just, change into that. And like with and so yes. Anyway, so this is the origins was astrology, or rather the knowledge of the skies and the universe and how to work with it was gifted to humanity from Shiva. And if we know that Shiva is consciousness, it is essentially the gift from consciousness itself. So you have to look at there's a lot of mythology in these Vedic traditions, and that's why we have to kind of look at how is it actually, it's not really meant to be interpreted physically, I think, or like verbatim. It's very symbolic. Well, you can choose if you believe it was actually happening. I'll leave that with listeners, but that's what they say. And this was like ages ago. And then what it shows is how to reach your full development. It is a way of looking at how to grow as a soul. What are my current challenges? What are my current karmic attachments? What have I chosen as a soul to work on in this lifetime? And this is what you see in the chart, depending on where the planets are. And also to look at it as, what can I learn from it? It's always there to be transformed, even if it's a planet that would be called a malefic or a negative aspect. It still has a gift for you. It still has something that you could interpret or transform into a power or a blessing. So, and there are a lot of aspects that are unlike, and I don't know if we should go into that or if I should talk about more how I've learned that the Western has been originated.
Yeah, sure.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we can get into that for sure. That's interesting. Yeah.
Maybe it's a good idea to just like distinguish what are the differences, or where do they come from? Why are they different, and in what way? Because I mean, the Western is great in so many ways. It really is, and it's not like it's untrue. I want to say, but the way I've been taught it, or the way that it's said, is that around the 1500s, the churches, the popes, the religious leaders, and I'm guessing, my feeling is, and I've learned that it's the Pope, so it's a Catholic church, or well, Christianity, let's say just Christianity, that created this Western astrology, and they kind of cut off. This was very deliberately done, I want to say. They cut off the connection to the movement in the skies. So they created an astrology that is based on the Earth's, we say in Swedish, dagjämningar. Do you have a good word for that?
That's
like the solstices and like the Beltane and Samhain and all these.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't
know
have a
the word in English.
No.
But yeah, like the...
anyway, yeah. These pagan, kind of from the beginning pagan, seasonal changes. So Beltane, Samhain, Easter, solstice, summer and winter, and all of these. They created an astrology that was based on these, and it's kind of like the calendar where you want to structure and trap the very free concept of time into a very 3D frame. So we have something that we have to, humanity has to adhere to and fit into this kind of trapping thing. And so they created an astrology, which is, the signs are the same, the houses are the same, so they symbolize the same thing, but they did what they had done with the religions and the solstices and all this with this as well, because, and then the timing is dated based on Earth's time, the time that kind of moves here. And so there's no interest, there's no connection to what is happening in the skies. The charts are set by Earth's rhythm. So therefore, the Western astrology is more descriptive of your earthly energy. So your personality. And that's why people do recognize themselves. It is it is accurate still. I recognize myself in my Western chart. It's not like it's untrue, as I said. But it has it kind of describes more the earthly tones. Whereas the Vedic, they follow the actual astronomical movements. And at the 1500s, then they had the same charts. They looked the same because, well, they were the same. But skies move a bit different than Earth. It's, some planets don't have the same elliptical movements. They are very erratic, some of them. And the universe is expanding and time is shifting and all of this. So after all this time, 500 years probably, we are in the Vedic 23 degrees behind now the Western, because the Western is ticking along, as it has been. The Vedic is following, the natural movements of the skies, and that is a bit different. So, and it's kind of, the gap is widening, but it's very slow. So 23 degrees in 500 years.
Wow.
It's shifted.
Yeah.
So, and that's why the signs are different. And that's why in the Vedic, I'm an Aries ascendant and I'm a Gemini. But in the Western, I'm Taurus ascendant and I'm a Cancer. But it can also be because the houses have 30 degrees each that you are the same. Depends on the degree of your planets. The sun or the ascendant and all this. So it doesn't have to be shifted. I have a couple of friends who are the same sun signs, for instance. But
is that
yes.
depending on which degree you're born in, if it's early or late then?
Yeah. So for instance, if I have a friend who is sun in Taurus, I think on 0 degrees Vedic, which means that she would be like a 23 degree in the Western, but still Taurus. Because it needs to be, if she would have been 16 degrees sun in Taurus, it would shift over to Gemini for Western. So that's how you see it. And this is the big difference and the reason for the difference of them. So, and it was done so that people would look to the churches instead of their own inner searches. There is a lot of other things in the Vedic astrology that I don't think exist in the Western. We have the Dasha and the Nakshatras. Have you heard about those?
I've heard about those. I would love for you to explain a little bit more about them. I heard it when I listened to Vedic astrology.
Yeah, and I thought, because those are a bit complex, and a lot of people, when I'm because you have to kind of expand. It's more multidimensional. It's more mystical. It's more moon-based than the Western as well. The Western is very much what is my sun sign, which is important. Of course it is. But the Vedic, I'm going to get my words straight now. The Vedic is more moon-based and soul-based. So you look at where's the moon and in what aspect of what stars does the moon get placed, and that creates your nakshatra. So if we go into the nakshatra, it is the star that is accompanying your moon. So there are 27 different ones, and they are placed around the chart. So they are called sometimes the 27 wives of the moon, or 27 moon stations. I know that there are a 28th one, which is Vega, and it's like a star one. It's just a star. It's very, it's like the other dimension. So very few, I think it's barely even there. So I won't go into that. That's very out there. not many astrologers use that one. But so depending on where the moon is, the nakshatra describes your moon, your inner environment, your emotional environment, your temperament, your sexuality, temperament, your what are your pitfalls in your ego? What does your ego want to do? What does your emotional soul urge? What was the point? What makes you tick? What drives you on an emotional level? And it's not just emotional in the Vedic, I will say, because I think many people misinterpret the moon as in, oh, it's just emotions just flowing. Sorry, I didn't mean to sound like disrespectful, but it's much more subtle than that. It's it's the way towards liberation, because you have to clarify your emotional waters to get to your sun soul energy. The way they see it in India and in the traditional sense is that up to 30, when your Saturn return has ended, you live a lot based on your ascendant, your rising sign, your personality. It's like the teenager is very physical. It's very, you can feel more attached to your ascendant sign before 30. And then the point of it is, I mean, this is also based on what you choose as a human, but the point of it is to move deeper into yourself, into your moonscape, and see what is there, what you need to process, what you need to integrate, learn your inner environment and your emotional flows to go deeper into your inner wisdom. And then after, I think it's 45, 50-ish, then if you have and when you have integrated all this, then you will take on your soul energy and work and live and bloom in that. So then your sun sign will come into play. So sometimes you might not feel it. You might feel very connected to your sun sign. I'm not saying that you're not feeling any of this before these ages, but that's the general kind of flow of life that traditionally was seen. So
I agree with that totally. Yeah,
it makes sense.
It makes so much sense. It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also with all these, the Saturn return between 27 and 30, the classical crises of development, and when you're supposed to leave your imprints behind and become who you really are. And that's it's a crisis energy. A lot of people think it's difficult. Even if you know about it, it's difficult because you have to let go of everything that is not you. That is what it serves you with. And then depending on where Saturn is and how it's, aspected, it's difficult in different ways, and it will show up in different ways. So, and then you have Uranus opposition at 40, which is like this lightning bolt of Kundalini that is gonna, come in if it's, aligned in a good way for you. If you have done what you're supposed to do, then that happens. Sometimes it happens anyway, and it's a next crisis, And then that's an opening for you to deepen your spiritual journey. And then you have Chiron return at 50. And then you will sit in your wisdom. And so the Indian traditions, or like the Vedic traditions, that's why the marriages and the families and the culture and they marry very early, and they have a lot of children early, because you do that before 30. And then you move in and sit, or 40, maybe it's actually before Uranus, because when Uranus comes, you're supposed to sit with that. You have to meditate. What is your Kundalini energy? You have to work with that to be, searching and processing this up through the crown to reach your sun energy. And then Chiron return is the opening of the spirit, the eternity, your soul. I almost said soulgasm there, but it's kind of what it is. It's an opening, an eruption of connection with your higher self. But that is based on you having done all this work. If you haven't, it's going to just be painful, probably.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of people have midlife crisis. They have probably not dealt with Saturn return. They regress. Is that what you say in English? Yeah, they go back to that and, find the youth again, because they maybe they didn't release what they needed to be released from at that time. So, where was I before this? What did we talk
So,
about?
yeah, we got in. I actually wanted to. This is a good time to ask because
Yeah.
we know, like, I've written a lot about the personalities of the planets. Now that you've been talking about the planets, could you like talk about the planets and their like how they are seen in Vedic astrology, what they symbolize?
Yes.
Because I think that's so interesting.
Great.
Yeah.
Lovely. I would love to. Wonderful. Okay. So let's start with the sun then. So the sun, as I said, it's generally seen as your soul energy. It's your light. It's your motivation. It is very connected to the Leo. It rules Leo house. It also is connected to Atlantis, Sirius. Sirius is our sun's son,
Yeah.
if we go back. It is very, it has a lot to do with independence, your own drive, confidence, obviously the father, the biological father. So it's also, symbolically could mean your own inner masculine. It's the masculine energy, basically. So where the sun is in the chart, you can see how the connection to your father is, how the connection to your own motivation, your glow, your inner light. So if it is, for instance, hidden in the 12th house, you might have some issues stepping up and taking your own space. You might have some issues with allowing your motivation to hold. If you haven't integrated it, you have to integrate it. After you've done that, it won't be a problem. So where the sun is in the chart, there you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of light, you have a lot of fire, there's a lot of power. So kind of depends on the aspects of it. I'm realizing it could be a bit hard to describe, but it's generally this that I've said. And the relationship with the father, as the moon is with the mother, the sun, just like it's a bit more ethereal in a way in the Vedic. I'm feeling when I do this, I kind of tune into the energy of it, and then I realize I'm having a hard time to put words on it because it's really soulfully aligned. It's hard to put words on something that is connected to the soul. I'm going to see if I can find some notes, because I know there is. No, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, the sun, yeah, it is your light. It is your like sunshine, your inner sunshine. And the sun is also like it's an entity in itself. It's Ra is what the Egyptians called it. That's also what the Syrians call it. It's an energy. It's ascending as well now. It's a star. So it's kind of sending out its energy towards Earth now, and that's why we are also starting to ascend and moving into moving into fourth dimension, which is why time is moving a bit weirder now. It's moving quicker. Time is collapsing. Things that took 2,000 years to happen before might happen in 100 years now, or things that on a personal level would have taken you 10 years to process, you might be over and done with in 6 months. Everything is speeding up because we are moving out of that dimension. And that is because our sun is doing that. So essentially, where you have your sun in the chart is where you are connected to your soul, and very much can describe your core essence. Your ascendant sign, your rising house, could describe your personality. For instance, I'm an Aries, so I can be very impulsive. I can be very quick. I can be very fiery. I can be very, energetic and quick to anger sometimes. But I'm a Gemini sun. So what I'm doing now is more connected to my soul than it is to my ascendant. You know, communicating, talking, channeling, and all this. So, it's also very friendly. The sun is the loyal friend. You know, the father of the light, the divine masculine, definitely connected to that. Like the moon is connected to the divine feminine and our emotions and our mother. It describes, as I said, the nakshatra. I can go into that now when we're going to the moon. That's where we were. Because depending, it's the houses do say something about your moon energy. It describes your connection to your mother. It describes your connection to your own inner motherhood, emotional awareness, emotional maturity, emotional challenges, and all this. You can also see if you're born on the full moon or new moon and how that would aspect your life. The nakshatra that you're born in, which is placed around the chart, then describes your inner environment a bit further. So, and they are also divided up in 3 sections, which is generative, operative, and destructive. So, and within those 3, there are also different ones that are godlike, manlike, and demonic or raksha. It's not demonic as we know the word, so I'm gonna just go into that a bit. It's more like it's your temperament, and if you have a raksha, which is demonic or more, you know, it means that there's a lot of power here. It's closer to Pluto energy, and you have to be very wary of how you use it. You can be very powerful in your moon energy. There's a lot of comparison. There can be a lot of jealousy. There can be those kind of energies that you have to watch out for. Everything is meant to be transformed. In a good way, if you've transformed your Raksha temperament, you can be very protective. You can be extremely powerful in facing darkness with yourself and others, overcoming very dark and difficult times. So it's an extremely powerful energy that is sometimes needed. If you have a very challenging life, you know, you have to fight power with power, or, you know, and if you have a man-like human temperament, then you're open both to the divine, the godlike, and to the demonic. So it depends on who you're with and how you have been integrating yourself, how you have been, you know, transforming. If you're leaning towards one or the other, it's more open. And the godlike temperament is very, as is described, godlike. It's very kind, compassionate, always overjoyed for other people, very empathic, does not get jealous, does not have issues with comparisons, is generally very sweet-natured. That's those 3. You can also see if you have a feminine or masculine moon. If you're a masculine moon, you could be more logical in your emotional space, more fiery also. If you're feminine, then you could be more flowing in your moon. You know, it's like a moon 2.0, more moon in your moon. So you can see that as well. And you have these pitfalls. For instance, we can take me as an example. I have Mula Nakshatra, which is one of, I think a lot of people say it's the most difficult one. It's very dark. It's ruled by Kali. All of them have gods as well that rule them. So you have a divine entity ruling your moon as well. So my moon is ruled by Kali. So it's a Mula. Yeah. So it's like, it's a death process through my emotions. And my moon is on, I think I mentioned this, on the galactic center point of this black hole. And it's because Mula is in a space in the chart where the galactic center is, where there's many black holes. That is the emotional journey. You have to move in through a death to come out. That is, frequently happening with Mula Nakshatra. It is Raksha, demon, temperament, which means that there can be some cruelness, possessiveness. There can be like pitfall. This is the pitfalls. The pitfalls for my ego is jealousy, comparison, and all this. And this was very, it was there in my younger days a lot. I've worked a lot with it, so it's not there now. Not as much anyway. So that's a bit of a fight. But because it's Kali, I have her with me in my moon. So if something comes up, I have a very strong, energy towards facing quite harsh energies, if that makes sense. And so you can see your emotional process there. My moon is masculine, male, and so on. So I have, my moon is very much a process of, reinvention, transformation, phoenix energy. Whereas another moon could have a complete different world. So that's very typical of the Vedic that does not exist in the Western. So when you look at the moon, what it means, you often look at the nakshatra as well. That's why I went in there again. You also look at how you process emotion, because the different houses have different elements, fire elements, air elements, and all this, which is as well in the Western. So if you have an air moon, then you process quick and all this. But it's the difference with the moon is mostly with the nakshatras, because you have a lot more layers in there. You have Brahma is one of the nakshatra rulers as well. You have a lot of gods that I think people have not heard of. It's rarer gods. So
the sun and moon, and then
Mars, I guess, could go to Mars. Mars is the warrior, the protector, the boundaries, your firepower. Also, it could be a warrior, which is, it could either be destructive or not, depending on. If you have retrogrades in your chart, that is a lot of self-doubt energy, a bit weird processing energy. Mars is self-doubt when it comes to your boundaries. It can also be that it's hard to understand the masculine principle, because the masculine is very present in the Mars vibration, and a lot of women are attracted to Mars energy, whereas the divine masculine, I said, was very sun energy, but it's actually also Jupiter that is the actual divine masculine. So Mars is very it's the protector and the keeper of peace in a way. So if you have integrated your Mars, you will have a very strong boundary. You will have a lot of energy to pursue your goals. You will protect yourself and your loved ones. And if you have these aspects, like if you have Chiron on Mars, you will be a very, warrior for peace for others, the one who protects the ones who need protection. So there's a lot of righteousness and like also loving, supportive help in Mars, but you have to balance it. And that's what is difficult in these times, because it's like an over energy of Mars here. So we tend to, shy away from it a bit because there's so much of it. Aggression, violence, over the line, possessiveness, warriors, not very emotional. So if you have Mars on your moon, your emotional life will be quite battered and stomped on. So that could be a very difficult connection. So that's essentially Mars energy. Mercury, which we have in retrograde right now, Um, Mercury is the communicator. It's the channeler. It's the joyous, curious one who wants to learn very quick, very witty, very funny, very energetic, ruled by houses Gemini and Virgo as well. So it's a green color connected with Gemini and Mercury is also very connected to healing. You know, it's very Archangel Raphael is very present in Mercury. Hermes, the communicator, you know, the one with the winged shoes. Everything's very quick with Mercury. Quick and fun, not much depth. The thing is with it, it's sometimes it's too quick. The balance that is needed with Mercury is to kind of integrate your timing, because you might run along and be too hasty with it. Communicate things without thinking first is one. Blabbing, talking behind people's backs, gossiping, that is the darker energies of Mercury. Talking shit, lying. So there's a lot of like communicative and connected to truth as well. What is true for you? What is your expressive truth? So that is very interesting there. Throat chakra connection with Mercury and Gemini and Virgo. So yeah, but there is a cosmic channeling energy as well, because it's very ethereal. It's very airy. It's very open and, you know, fun loving. So we have that. Let's see here. Thinking where to go next. We have Venus. Venus generally is the loving planet, which people mostly see as, where's my love, the partner. But Venus actually is, in its exalted position, it's in Pisces Vedically, which means that the higher aspect of Venus is connection to your higher self. That is essentially the ultimate cosmic love, the unconditional love that people seek in other people. They're not going to find it there. They're probably not, you know. There's not many who believe that that kind of universal cosmic love can be anchored in this realm because of our vibration on Earth. You can feel it for a time, but it's very hard to anchor it and make it stick. So Venus really represents a connection to your higher self, to consciousness, it wants to merge. It wants to merge with everything. That is the energy of it, you know, the lovers merging with two becoming one. What it is in the Vedic, what you really want to see, what is the divine interpretation of the planets, Venus, it is consciousness, connection to consciousness. It's Lakshmi, you know, it's abundance. Venus rules Taurus. Enjoying life, enjoying yourself, blissfulness. And the bliss of having this Kundalini energy rising, which is, you can also see the chakras in the Vedic chart, and Pisces exalted Venus is in the second chakra in the chart, which is sexuality and Kundalini and the divine feminine and, you know, this holy grail of the womb that we know we have. So it's very, it can be very multi-layered in how you interpret this. And people who, I mean, there's a lot of miscommunication and people, I mean, I'm not saying that it doesn't mean love in a partner, and it does describe, for a man, it does describe the woman in his life, Venus. If a woman is to look in her chart, she should look at Jupiter if she wants the divine masculine, you know, that's where he is. Venus for a woman will describe your divine feminine, your connection to your feminine. How do you feel about your femininity and how does that express itself? So we have that. But this kind of energy of connection is what it wants to show you. And it's up to you, essentially. If you want to search for this divine connection in a human being, you might find that if you're feeling empty, I will say, you will feel that well, nothing will help, because the connection is not in another being, it's in the higher self of you, your highest potential self. So that's essentially Venus, exalted in Pisces, which generally is the 12th house. So connection with everything, the merging when a drop becomes the ocean. That is Venus. Moving to Jupiter then, which is, I did a YouTube about Ganesha, and Jupiter is Ganesha. So the marriage of Lakshmi and Ganesha is Venus and Jupiter coming together, which is a very divine energy. Jupiter is the guru, is regarded as the guru in the Vedic, the higher self. This is where your higher self comes to you in this place. So if you have it in your 11th house, it will be through friends and in groups. You might have opening doors through friends, blessings through friends. If you have Jupiter in your first house, you will feel in your physical form your higher self. Your intuition and your guidance will be felt very physically and very closely and very, very connected to you. You also have morals and ethics and conscience with Jupiter. So if you have a person with Jupiter in first house, they cannot lie. They will get physically ill if they lie. I have a couple of friends who I've seen this with that, confirm this. So Jupiter represents your guidance and is the only planet that is stronger than Rahu, which I will come to next, which is also something that is different between the Western and Vedic. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, Jupiter, you will find the opening of doors, blessings, because it is Ganesha. He's the one you have to go to first to come through to what you actually, where you want to go. He's the one, the gatekeeper, basically, to the divine. So, and generally it's luck, blessings and luck and good fortune and easy flow and all of this. So it's a very expansive planet. It's everything. You can also, if you want to see a balancing view of Jupiter, is that it enhances everything. It's everything bigger and greater. And that's not all, For instance, now we have Jupiter and Pluto conjunction in retrograde. So Jupiter is going to expand the effects of Pluto retrograde because they're on the same degree. So everything is a bit, this year is going to be very enhanced because these two are following each other. And in the beginning of next year as well. So it depends, but generally it's a good aspect. Jupiter is a good thing. If we go to what is in the Western known as the North Node and the South Node of the Moon, in the Vedic they're called Rahu and Ketu. And these, I don't know how much you work with them in the Western.
Yeah,
do you know?
The North Node and South Node, definitely a lot. It is really important in the readings. Representing Dharma and Karma. It's really, I think, a good indication of where we're coming from and where we're going.
Exactly. That is exactly the way it's interpreted here as well. Rahu is the north and Ketu is the south. So Rahu is the reason why you're here, future. Both of them represents the aspect of time. And Ketu, south, is karma, past lives. So what you look at in the charts is those two are very important. Rahu is 18 times stronger than anything else in the chart. The only planet that can handle Rahu is Jupiter. That's the only one that is stronger than Rahu. And I remember my teacher years ago said that he had kind of thought about for a long time why certain people in some countries and in some situations that are that's so dire, and it's so painful, and it's so hard for them, their lives, why don't they end their lives? He had a thought, and he walked with this because he kind of couldn't understand something that in the Western society, we have a lot of we have it quite nice most of the time. If you look at like Syria and, places like that now. And he really pondered this just to understand it, not to judge it or anything like that, but just to understand, why would you stay? What is it that makes a person stay in that misery when that's all there is? Seemingly, that's all there is. I don't know, and he didn't know, but he walked with that. And then he kind of fell into it, and the astrology interpretation would be Rahu then, because it's so much stronger than all the other ones. It keeps you on earth. That is what pulls you in your incarnation here. That shows you why you're here and what you're here to learn. So in the Vedic, what Rahu represents is that. What's your purpose? What is your, what have you chosen to learn? Because it shows where the soul has less knowledge. It has things to integrate. There are gaps in the experience of the soul here. This is the focus of your incarnation. And then Ketu, respectively, is on the other end, in opposition always, and shows you what you have done. What is in your backpack into this life? What's your past lives? What's your karma? And so in the Vedic, Ketu is known a bit humoristically as neti neti on Sanskrit, which means not that and not that. Which it can bring with it a sense of denial, because you're not meant to go there anymore. And that can be very frustrating, especially before Saturn return, because you want to do what you're comfortable with. The comfort zone is where Ketu is. So you can spend a lot of time searching for this and be painfully ignored, or like you cannot have that. So if you have Ketu in the 4th house with your mother, 4th house is mother, it can indicate that you have had a lot of past lives that have been focused on family, on, nurturing a family, having kids, being a mother or father, and having all this life, and really learned that. And then Rahu ends up in the 10th house. So you're here to be a career person. You're here to learn how it is to be successful, business, work, have an individual place, a role in that sense. But what it can do is Ketu in the 4th is the denial of motherhood. So you can search a lot of children who have this, have a very painful experience growing up, because they search for their mother, and the more they look for her, the less she gives. And it's like, with batteries, plus and minus the poles, it's like magnetic movement, and it's very painful. So you can feel very denied your mother's love. And this is what it's meant to be. I will say it's there because it needs to be there, because you need to learn something. It can also mean that it's karma with the mother in that case and all this, but that's how you see it. So you're supposed to focus in on the Rahu, and Rahu is so strong, it will drag you in there. It will drag you back to where it is. This is what you're meant to do, and can create a lot of different experiences, because it needs to fill itself with experience. That you can look at it as an empty hole. So you can feel a little emptiness here as well. Like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what is right here. I have no experience here. So you have to learn. So that's Rahu and Ketu. And they also, they mature, is what they say, when it's like they've had their time for integration at like 42 years. Then Rahu is matured. And then it will be less difficult. And you can move into another phase of being, which is more soul focused than the sun energy and all this that we were talking about before. So I think those two are very interesting. I love Rahu and Ketu. They say a lot about, as you say, the dharma and the karma. What's here for the soul? What's the purpose, you know? So I love those.
And
they can be quite... Yeah,
no,
sorry. Go on.
No, I want to hear more about it. I just wanted to ask if there's any other points that are... I assume there's a lot, but besides the planets and the nodes, is there anything else that is important to look at in the chart?
Yeah, of course, yes. The nakshatra, as I described, is one very important point, because it says a lot about the inner challenge. What is the challenge for this person when they're going to move through their own moon? That's one. Then we have the dasha, which is something that I don't think exists in the Western. The dasha is... let's see how to describe this. This is the higher selves, or the soul's path. All the planets in the dasha, it's like a list. It's like a period of time from you're born. These dashas roll and roll, and it's determined where you're beginning. I'm going to try to make sense of this as I go, depending on where your moon is. So your moon starts your dasha. And then the dasha is like each planet has a different time frame. So you have, for instance, Rahu time is 18 years. Rahu dasha is 18 years. I think Rahu and Ketu are 7 years. The moon is 10 years. And so they have a pattern. They always follow the same time. And it's like they're following each other.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to describe this, but it's like a period of time. And so depending on where the moon is, the planet ruling your dasha, your nakshatra, they also have planets ruling them, starts the dasha. And this describes which planets are in focus in your chart right now. It's essentially a depiction of your soul's journey according to what your soul has planned. That's what it is. So you can see what is your challenges at the moment. You can see if you have periods of time where it's meant to focus on yourself, or when you're meant to focus on work. If you're in the moon dasha, it will be a lot of cleansing of emotions. And if you're in Rahu dasha, there will be a focus on the Rahu aspect in your chart. I'm going to see if I can find. It's interesting. Find the list of in which order they are, if that's interesting. But that's essentially what it is. Does that make sense, or did I just not explain it good?
No, it makes sense. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Does it? Good.
Yeah.
Please say if it doesn't, because I know that it is complex, these things, and the Vedic is a bit complex, and I know that when you have full understanding yourself, but it's sometimes hard to describe to somebody else. Yeah, here we go. The longest dasha is actually Venus, 20 years. So they all have a very set pattern. So it's Ketu, and then Venus, and then the Sun, Moon, Mars, Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. That's the order of them. And where you start in these is dependent on where your moon is, because your nakshatra is ruled by one of these planets. So for instance, mine is Ketu. My nakshatra is ruled by Ketu. So I was born into the Ketu dasha. So my first time in my life was ruled by Ketu, past lives, denial, asceticism, or eccentricity, weirdness, and can be quite harsh, strict, and that stuff. If you were born into a Jupiter dasha, you could have a start to your life which is very blessed, that is filled with luck. Things are going easy, and that's how you can see it. And then they move along, and that's what you can look at that where it is. And they have also guests. So these are the, overlapping dashas, and then they have other planets that sort of guest them. So you can be in a moon dasha, but then Rahu enters, and so he's moon Rahu, and then you can see where Rahu is. So that's kind of how you look at it. So they rule, and what they do is they describe the concept of divine timing, essentially. When is it timing for me to move, to have a relationship? That's how you kind of predict. That's how you do predictions in the Vedic. You can look at what is in the dasha. Is there a divine timing for this now? Yes or no? And if it's not, maybe what you're feeling is to do with something else. If you're meeting somebody and you're getting very loved up with that one, and there's nothing in your chart that describes that there's a relationship guided, blessed by your chart, by your divine plan, then the relationship is probably doomed to not work out. It's not there to work out. It might be a karmic thing. It might be something you need to learn. You can see that. But if it's not in the chart, there's many people who are in relationships that it's not been in alignment, and then, it doesn't work out, or it's filled with conflict, and it's just, not good. So that's how you can see it, is what things are in alignment according to the dasha, according to the plan. And this is also what the Western cut off. You don't look at this, I don't think, in the Western.
Exactly.
The nakshatras and so what is the divine flow of things. So you can see, you can also go back in time. I've had a lot of instances happen in my life where there's been very significant things happen, and the exact date is something aligning in the dasha, shifting of planets or something, on the exact day, which is very cool, which means that you're following your guidance, basically. So that is also different, which I think is very interesting. But that one is a bit more, take some time to learn how to work with it, to feel into it. And that's, I think, essentially the difference, that it's more mythical, it's more subtle energies, it's more emotional energies, it's more intuitive in a way. You have to, I'm not saying that the Western is not intuitive, but this is very, so yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really a big science. It's like when you start tapping into something, you can like peel off each layer. But I also think it's really, for most astrology, it's really good to have, if you want to understand yourself, someone who can also read it, and you can learn about it deeper that way, and that's how you can start your journey if you're interested. And I assume that you do Vedic astrology readings for people.
Yeah. Oh, I do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
I will also link all of your information. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, they can follow the links in the show notes, because I think there's so much that can be learned here. I really need to look into this as well.
Thank you. It's so fun, and it's so big, and I realized we didn't get through all the planets, but I think it's a start to something, and if there's interest, there's always possible to talk more about it, to talk more about the different. I mean, you can have one podcast about one planet, because it's so deep in a way. And this is also how I work when I do the starseed alignments. If I look at where your which starseed you have with you, I look at the Vedic chart and see which star systems you align with in different ways, and then
so you can see
go from there.
The origins from a starseed perspective as well. You can see that through the. Do you look at that through the Vedic astrology chart, or is it a different? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I see which planets are close to the different star systems. For instance, Sirius is in Gemini in the
Yeah.
Vedic, and Lyra is in the Sagittarius, and you can look where if you have alignments there. And you can do that with Western as well. It's just a translation of, the degrees. But yeah, that's how I do that, and then I channel.
Amazing.
So it's very interesting, these cosmic connections, and I love talking about it, and I hope I make sense.
Yeah, definitely. I loved it. So interesting. And for sure, there will be more conversations about this. And definitely.
Yeah, I would love to.
As
I would love to.
usual.
There's so many
Yeah,
subjects.
as usual, such knowledge and inspiration. I'm really grateful that you wanted to share this with all of us. And I really recommend everyone to check out Emma's Instagram, and you also do Facebook and YouTube, and just get in touch, because I think, how long would a reading be with you? Because I think it's so much, like there's so much you can look into, and you can. Yeah.
There is a lot, and I usually do it when it's clients that are overseas, America and other countries. I usually do it via WhatsApp.
Yeah.
I record messages, and it's around 90 minutes, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but that's around at least 90 minutes. And then I go through the chart, your aspects, and your Dasha, your Nakshatra, your, the aspects I see, your Chiron. Chiron, I love to look at that, because I think it's so deep and so healing.
Yeah.
And they're very interesting. There's so many layers of everything you can do. And you can also have different readings that just look at the transits, what is happening right now. If you're not interested in your birth chart, it's based on the birth chart, of course, So that's usually how I do it. And it's I can do phone calls as well, but it's a bit more difficult when it's different time zones. But
Lovely.
so that is
so
lovely.
Interesting, and thank you so much for doing this today. I'm sure we will talk again and talk more deeply into this. There's so much to uncover. So I would just want to say, I'm super grateful. Thank you so much, and I'm wishing you so much love and blessings. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this episode helps you on your journey, and that maybe you can find some inspiration to learn more about astrology and to discover Vedic astrology. I'm super inspired and so grateful for Emma, and I really encourage you to check out her Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. She does amazing work, and you can find all of the links in the show notes in this podcast. So thank you so much for being here. Let's close this podcast with a deep inhalation through the nose and exhale out through your mouth. Namaste.